Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Welcome into the Redbird Report. Cardinals, as we are recording, are currently playing game one of a doubleheader. And T-Bone, somebody needs to figure out what's going on and who the Cardinals pissed off when it comes to these doubleheaders. Major League Baseball this year, as a whole, has played 14 doubleheaders. Do you know how many of those the Cardinals have now played?
I'm going to go with 5 as my answer.
6. Oh. This is the 6th doubleheader of the season for the St. Louis Cardinals, which is nearly half of the entire league. 30 teams, the Cardinals have played nearly half of the doubleheaders. It's absurd. It doesn't make any sense. It defies all logic. So much so that Major League Baseball has a rule in the CBA where if you get to that fifth doubleheader, by the time you get to 6, they have to ask the team, hey, are you cool with playing a split day-night doubleheader? And the team can say no, say we would like those to be back-to-back. And that's what the Cardinals have decided to do today in Chicago. So as we're recording this, that is what is the backdrop to this conversation. They are currently losing. I don't know how that game's going to go. You're in the
no
future.
Spoilers.
I don't know what's going to happen there. But that is why, if we're not referencing some of the stuff that happened in that doubleheader, it's because of the logistics of it all. We just didn't have the opportunity to be able to watch that game prior to us recording. All right, T-Bone, Cardinals are in a weird spot right now. That's both in terms of where they're at with their record, what their plans are for the trade deadline, but also just when you look at the opportunity that exists right now for some of these young players. This was the season of opportunity, right? All the young guys are going to get all the chances possible. And that was never going to be perfect. There was always going to be somebody that kind of got left on the outside looking in. And for most of this season, that somebody has been Nolan Gorman. And for a lot of that time, I think Cardinals fans, by and large, were like, it's fine. We're not really excited to see Gorman anyways. That has changed because now Gorman is hitting again. It has also changed because now you have 6 players for 4 spots. It's second base, left field, right field, and DH. Those are the 4 spots that are available for the following players: Donovan, Gorman, Burleson, Nootbaar, Walker, and Herrera. For most of the season, somebody in that group has been struggling and somebody in that group has been hurt. Herrera was out for a month. Walker just went down for a little while. And like whether it be Gorman or Burleson, somebody's been struggling. No harm, no foul. You figure it out, right? These things have a way of working themselves out, and it did for the Cardinals for most of the season. It's no longer working itself out for you. Now they are at a place where they have to figure out how to divvy up these playing time. And it's not an easy thing to do. Over their last 4 games, as the time of we're recording, since Jordan Walker came off of the injured list, Herrera started all 4. Burleson is an everyday player now, starting all 4. Walker started 3 along with Gorman. Nootbaar got 2 games, but 2 of those were off days because of this horrible slump that he's in right now. And Donovan started 2, including today being off in game 1 because it's a doubleheader and they don't want him going both of those games. And then the other one that he was off was for the injury with the toe issue. T-Bone, this is going to get harder before it gets easier for Ollie Marmol to manage. How do they make their way through this with 6 guys for 4 spots?
Yeah, I feel for Ollie Marmol because this feels and screams, and it was one of my concerns coming into the year where I was asking people about this. Doesn't it feel like 2023 with the outfield all over again, where it was you had Carlson, O'Neill, Walker was in the conversation, Juan Yepes, I think, was part of that conversation. Like they had 5 guys for Burley, I think, was in that conversation for 3 spots. And now, as you mentioned, it's 6 for 4. I think you can lock in 2 of these spots automatically, whether it's about Runway or it's about winning, right? I think second base is Brendan Donovan. Lock it in. I don't care if it's a righty, don't care if it's a lefty. He's your second baseman. And I think DH, based on the way they operate, is locked in as Ivan Herrera. Got to have the bat in the lineup, so he's going to be locked into the lineup. So I would say you lock him in at DH. And now it becomes, okay, sorry, Nolan Gorman, you're out. I just think that's where they are. I think that the Cardinals have already chosen what they believe in Nolan Gorman, and I think they decided that early on in the season. And I know the equation has changed. Yes, he has started to hit. When he didn't get a very big Runway sample size early on in the year, and this came after they couldn't trade Nolan Arenado, I think it became clear, okay, Gorman's just not part of the plans. They would be willing to move him at some point, and if he ends up hitting, so be it. They're ready to move on. I still think that holds true in this situation. I personally believe you have to lock in Nootbaar and left. I think Lars Nootbaar, though he is struggling, should be a guy that still is given this quote-unquote runway, because we've seen it in his past. He's been above league average the first 3 full seasons that he's been a St. Louis Cardinal. So to me, he should be locked in. Now it comes down to Walker and Burleson. And for me, this is where they are having the issue of trying to navigate both paths of runway versus, hey, what if we could make the playoffs in 2025? To me, you've got to pick one or the other. And I think whichever one you choose gives you your answer in right field. If you say, hey, we want to be a competitive team, Alec Burleson is your starting right fielder because he gives you the best at-bat right now. If you are about runway, I think it is given to Jordan Walker and you lock him in for, I would say, probably 2 out of every 3 for sure, maybe even more than that in series where you see maybe a lefty thrown in there with righties. I think that is where they're at right now, and I would say that they've got to pick a path. I don't think they can no longer do this whole juggling of this is about runway while also trying to stay competitive, and I would also add this. Just because I say it's about runway for Jordan Walker doesn't mean I'm not willing to pinch hit for him late in a game and give up Burleson a at-bat every now and then late off the bench.
I don't know what you do. I really don't. It's the worst possible answer for somebody in my spot, but it's the truth. I'm just giving you my God's honest truth. I don't know how you handle this. Like, Herrera has to be out there every day. He has to be. He's your best hitter. So whether it was the season of opportunity or just we're trying to win, that guy has to be in your lineup every day. I don't know how you can convince yourself that Burleson shouldn't also be in this lineup. I'm not the biggest, batting average is the most important thing in the world guy. When you're batting above 300, it starts to matter because then it just boosts your on-base percentage up as well. The goal is to get on, and when you're hitting for average as well, it helps you drive runners in. Burleson has to be in this lineup. Walker's not a good baseball player right now. That's part of this conversation, right? I think Jordan Walker still has that star potential. You watch him play and you're like, man, he's a massive human being. There are very few people that size. It's the Earth theory, right? The global theory. There are very few people that size that can swing the bat that hard, that can run that fast, and that have the ability to hit the ball that hard. All of those traits that you see in Jordan Walker, you want to bet on them. You want to believe that they can come together in this 5-tool type of player that the Cardinals can build around. Other teams in this division have done this, and it's worked for them. And for whatever reason, I don't blame the Cardinals necessarily for this at this point. I think part of it is just, hey, this is on Jordan Walker. It's time for him to take his career into his own hands. It hasn't worked for him. So do you keep betting on that time after time after time? He's still very young, but he's had a lot of opportunity at this level. And do you do so at the expense of Alec Burleson, who's been great this season, and he has not been a huge liability defensively? And do you do so at the expense of Lars Nootbaar, who has 4 years of track record that suggests this is an above league average offensive and defensive player who has gone through a really bad 20-game stretch? And I think that's something that is crazy to me, T-Bone, is the number of people, fans or otherwise, that are ready to just throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of Lars Nootbaar, saying that's it, we're good, he's no good. What? Based on 20 games? Players all across Major League Baseball go through slumps like this. It's strange to me how out we have to be now on Lars Nootbaar because of a really bad slump where he's striking out all the time. I get all of that, but dude, can we have a little bit of patience here? If we're willing to wait 3 years for Jordan Walker, we can at least wait a month on Lars Nootbaar. So my answer to all of this is, I don't know what you do, because I really want to see Jordan Walker get out there with regular at-bats, but if you do so, you're doing so at the expense of 2 guys that have shown the ability and the propensity to help you offensively. I don't know. Throw up my hands. Hopefully you can find a way to make this thing work with everybody getting a day off, basically.
And I think the position that I would say single-handedly kind of is making this decision for them or making this complicated for them, and I'm sure you agree with this, is that catcher spot. It's if you play Ivan Herrera, now I just opened up another spot, right? If I say Herrera's catching 2 out of 3 days, I can now go Burley at DH, Burley or Gorman. I can go in the outfield with Newton left, and I can go with Walker in right.
And basically, just at that point, Gorman's the odd man out, most likely.
Exactly.
Which has been the case all year long, and people have been okay with up until this point. So
and I
live with it.
I would still add, I still think you can get him at-bats It's just not like three to four at-bats a game like he's starting. To me, you still then use Gorman as a guy that comes off of the bench, right? You use him in a spot where, okay, maybe there is a big right-handed slider against Jordan Walker. Now we do go to Nolan Gorman in this situation. So I still think there are at-bats there for him. Now, it's not as many, but I think that is the single biggest spot that they are having to try and balance right now. And that's why when I say it is between being competitive for this year or Runway, I almost feel like I'm just talking about the catcher situation. And for me, it's because if you want to be a competitive team, I totally understand why Ali Marmol would run Pedro Pages at catcher, because he's the guy that is the best game caller, they say. He is their best defensive catcher when you look at blocking, controlling the running game. And that allows you to feel more comfortable about, okay, this is going to keep us more competitive. This way we kind of maximize what is a pitch to contact staff. We think Pages does that. But when I think about Runway, I don't think Pages falls into that category. And that's not a shot at Pedro Pages.
That's the thing. I don't know. What if they do?
But this would be my question to them, and this will be something we'll have to ask around and do a little digging at the ballpark next time. Like, what is the Runway that you're looking to, like, get answers on for Pages? Is it his offense? Because, like, his pitching was very good, or his defense was very good last year, and we've already seen that hasn't taken a step back. Like, I just don't know what else you're looking for Pages for Runway.
What if they just view him as a starting catcher? Like, maybe it's not. Maybe he is to them Brendan Donovan, where it's, this guy's just in place for us. We feel really good about it. Why would we? There is no, like, Runway that we're looking for here. We just think this is going to be our starter at this position for the next 4 to 5 years. So let's go with it. I mean, if they value defense the way that they say they do, and they've shown that, they've built around that, and they have consistently stayed with that, especially at the catcher position. Like Wilson Contreras, a month in, they were like, oh boy, this is not what we thought we signed up for here. So much so that they threw him under the bus a month after signing him to this huge contract. They did the same thing basically with Ivan Herrera last year, where he's hitting 300. There's no questions about the bat, but they had questions about his ability to be defensively behind the plate. So they sent him back down to AAA. And then Pages gets the opportunity, and they've ran with it ever since and really never looked back for any significant amount of time. What if they just say, Pages is our catcher, and all these other guys that you're throwing up here, like Jimmy Crooks, eventually Leo Bernal, right now Ivan Herrera, they're bats, and they're backup catchers that can start 1 out of every 3 games behind the plate when Pages has that day off. But otherwise, they fit more into like the DH, first base, backup catcher type than they do an everyday catcher for this organization. What if that's how they view it?
I would say, like, what is the full plan then, right?
What do you mean?
Like, you mentioned a bunch of those names. They have a bunch of those, and I'm not even just talking about guys that are catcher/first baseman. Let's throw Burleson into this. Right fielder, kind of, but they really didn't want to do it till they had to do it this year. That's also a first baseman. While you have Contreras locked under contract for another, whatever it is, 2 or 3 years after this year. Like, I understand if you want to be defensive-minded, but then, like, where are all these puzzle pieces going?
They have to be traded. Some of them. I don't know who they will choose, but I think that is the choice for Chaim Bloom, right? You get into this offseason, and this is what 2025 was all about, is finding answers on these players. I'm not sure Pedro Pages is necessarily one of those players they were looking for answers for. I think they know what Pedro Pages is. He's a below average bat that's a great game caller and that they trust behind the plate defensively. And so we can value that differently, but I think we can all kind of agree on what the prototype of the player is going to be, right? And you look at these teams that are contending, most of them have plus defenders behind the plate. Most of them. And so maybe the Cardinals view it as, okay, we've got that piece in place. Now let's give opportunities to these other guys at other spots to find out who else is going to be here with Pedro Pages. I know that sounds like a weird way to frame it because Pages is not like a franchise player or anything, but if you view that as, okay, this is one puzzle piece, not the corner piece, but a piece nonetheless, what else are we adding in around him? And then this offseason, that's when you choose. So maybe it is Contreras ends up waiving his no-trade clause this offseason. He's no longer your first baseman. And this offseason is when you transition Ivan Herrera. And Herrera now is no longer a DH or a catcher. He is a first base who occasionally gets opportunities at DH, which opens up the DH slot for Alec Burleson. It also opens up a potential backup catcher spot for probably Jimmy Crooks next year, for example. I don't know how they're viewing this, but you asked the question of like, what does that mean for Pedro Pages? That would be my guess on their explanation for it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have a tough time convincing. Like, I don't even disagree with what you're necessarily saying or the fact that, like, them deciding to go with Pages 2 out of 3 games, right? Because to me, I don't know if I said it on the podcast or I said it on our show. He screams Martin Maldonado. Now, I think that guy has been overvalued in his career a little bit, and that's not a shot against him. But I do think teams fall victim to too much defense behind the home plate and what they believe the value of it is. But the reason that I have a tough time with this is because when you say that, I also say, okay, well, if you're doing that, then I feel like you're not getting this whole runway conversation on the answers that necessarily matter for what you're talking about of the pieces that you're looking for to be a part with Pedro Pages, because you get into this position, which is a self-made logjam to where we're sitting here going, shoulder shrug emoji. We have no idea how you get these 4 guys into 2 spots because you're not going to pull out Herrera for the bat, who no. I would say has already solidified himself for a part of the future now, whatever that means for that puzzle piece. I have no idea where he's playing position-wise. But
it's a multicolored, multidimensional. We're not totally sure what this is yet.
It's like the middle piece of a puzzle. It takes forever to figure out where it goes.
It's a piece, though. We're putting you here. We're setting you aside. You're with us. We just got to figure out exactly where you're going to go.
So, like, that makes things complicated. But then it comes down to, like, Burley, Walker, and, like, maybe Nootbaar falls into this category. Gorman maybe falls into this category. I think you know what you have in Nootbaar. That's why I almost lock him in left field. I
agree.
I agree with what you're saying. I can't believe people are going, we got to get rid of him. He's going through a 30-game rough stretch. I just saw something like different players, so don't yell at me. Aaron Judge has struck out 15 of his last 21 at-bats. Everybody goes through a stretch where they don't hit.
Corbin Carroll last year for 3 months was one of the worst players on planet Earth. And then
now
guess
he's
what?
Unbelievable.
He was amazing the rest of the season, and then this year he's back to being an MVP candidate. Weird. It's almost like baseball players go through slumps.
Exactly. So, I feel like you know what he is. I think the question is a matter between Burley, Walker, and Gorman. But I just feel like you can't get these answers if you're going to continuously put Pages behind the plate. And that's why I get to the whole, well, maybe you should slide Herrera back there. Because to me, that would be about Runway, creating opportunities for everybody else. Because I don't think there are answers to be had on Pages. And to me, that is more of a competing for 2025 move than it is, okay, let's think about the future and let's just see what happens if we win or lose.
I think it even goes beyond that. It's not just Pages being locked in at catcher. It's also Donovan being locked in at second base right now.
Yeah.
And this is something that's gone a little under the radar, I think, but the Cardinals have made it pretty clear. Ollie Marmol has made it pretty clear. He views Brendan Donovan right now as a second baseman. He's not a utility player. He is not a guy that goes out to the outfield all the time. I know today, as we're talking about this, maybe later on, he literally is in the outfield. It's possible. I don't know. But he is a guy that they really prefer to just have, hey, he's going to play at second base every day. That's his job. And they think that has helped him this season with his consistency. There is no questioning it. It's, I'm going to be batting here in the lineup and I'm going to be playing this position. That is something they've really honed in on over the last couple of years. And now he is getting that opportunity. Well, that means there's limited opportunities for Gorman. Because if he's not going to be playing second base because Donnie's playing every day, you used to be able to say, okay, well, on some days, Gorman will go to second, Donnie will go to the outfield. Maybe that's a day where Burley goes to DH or Burley has the day off, for example. You can make it work that way. If that's not an option for you right now, well, then where is Gorman's opportunity coming? Maybe one day a week where he gives either Arenado or Donovan a day off. Maybe you get an opportunity when Herrera is behind the plate at catcher to go in at DH, but some of those opportunities are probably going to go to Burleson as well. Gorman is the one that consistently this season has been just pushed to the side. And I think for most of the season that's been fair. I do wonder right now if they're missing out on an opportunity to find out if there's something more in there. And I don't know how you make it work, especially if Donovan is stuck at second base. But that's the guy to me that you can kind of figure this out outfield-wise. You can kind of figure this out with Herrera. Gorman, I don't know how there's any other option unless you're willing and able to move Donovan to the outfield. And this has ramifications beyond just this season with Gorman. It makes me wonder about Sajacy. Where's he playing, dude? He's not going to play over Donovan at second. Arenado, I don't think, is going anywhere in the near future. So what's his role here? You asked that about some of like Ivan Herrera, first base DH types, if Pages is going to be behind the plate. Same thing is true for Sajacy with Donovan at second. What about Weatherholt? Weatherholt is definitely not going to be a shortstop here. I'm pretty confident of that. Well, second is the other natural position that you could land him at. But if you view Donovan as a guy that you're building around, probably not. So is he a third baseman? And if so, hey, guys, can we get him some opportunities at third down in the minors? Like more opportunities at third, please. That would be a good thing for him. So that way we don't go into another situation like what happened with Jordan Walker, or he went from third base to the outfield like a week before he was called up to the major league. So I say all of that to say this. Donovan at second base, I'm cool with it. I've got no issues with that whatsoever. It just begs a lot of other questions this year and beyond.
Yeah, first to your point on Gorman, I think he is the guy that I think it's just become clear. They made the decision, at least the coaching staff, because I wonder if there's a little, and I don't want to say there's a bunch of like push and pull. Like I think at times you really saw that between Schilt and the front office, and I think you really saw that at times when we talk about the Blues with Berube and Army at times. So I don't think it's extreme, but I think it's clear the coaching staff decided Gorman's not a part of our plans moving forward. And I think that the front office just has to come to accept that and move on from their fate. But to your question on Brendan Donovan, if he is the guy that is here long-term at second base, it goes back to our question on Thomas Sajacy and why he wasn't up here when we were talking in the last podcast, which is I don't think this guy has a role for the team as an everyday player. And that's not the worst thing in the world, right? It's okay to have a guy that can be up here as a Swiss Army knife and still be getting playing time and learning that. Because even if you did pull Donovan out of the equation, right? Let's just say they, traded Donovan, don't re-sign him, whatever. I still wouldn't say Sajacy's the guy that's the starting second baseman in the long-term plans. Maybe there's a year where he starts as that, but the long-term answer I would have thought would still be J.J. Weatherholt
and
over
he's
him.
Crushing at AA, so is probably going to get the call up to AAA soon and will be on almost the same timeline at that point as Sajacy.
Exactly.
It's very confusing.
And
do you know how many games, by the way, real quick on Weatherholt, he's played at third base at the AA level so far this year?
I'm going to go 0.
He has not yet taken a game at third base. He's played 29 at shortstop and 12 at second.
And see, I'm a little surprised they've given him more at short, but I guess they don't really bother about the middle infield there. So I don't think that's as big a deal. I also wonder, and like I know Ollie said this publicly, right? So like maybe he is speaking for the coaching staff and the front office. He is supposed to be kind of the mouthpiece of the organization. I wonder if that is more of a Ollie believes this, but the front office believes, hey, Brendan Donovan is a nice piece for us. That doesn't necessarily mean he's the guy that's going to be here long term. I wonder if it could be. I mean, they keep talking about Sajacy as an everyday player, and the only way I can get to this spot, but it's still 2 years away, so that's why I'm not sure this fits, is if you went Weatherholt at second and Sajacy is like the third baseman when they came off the books. But that's 3 years away, right? Arenado didn't come off the books till after 2027. Brendan Donovan wouldn't technically be off the books till 2027 when he goes through the arbitration process. So I don't know how they work all this stuff out if they're going to keep Brendan Donovan as the everyday second baseman and they are viewing that for the long haul. Because if that's the case, then they've got to start getting, in my opinion, Weatherholt third base reps, like you're saying, and make him the heir apparent to Nolan Arenado when his contract's off the books.
All right, so that is where they're at with some of these options for them in the middle infield. It's crowded, it's difficult, and this season is all about opportunity, and they're trying to give the best opportunity possible to all of these different options. It's just not an easy situation right now. Whether you're Ollie Marmol or in John Mozeliak's shoes, stuff gets a little difficult. By the way, I should take this moment real quick while you're watching. Next week on this show, we're planning to have Rob Cerfolio. He is the assistant general manager for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's overseeing the minor league development system. So we'll ask him about J.J. Weatherholt. We'll ask him about Thomas Sajacy, some of the plans down there, some of the things that they're seeing on the pitching side of things as well. So if you're watching this right now, be sure to check that out next week. Be sure to keep an eye out for that. Should be coming on this show next week with Cardinals assistant general manager Rob Cerfolio joining us here on the Redbird Report. Coming up next, should the Cardinals have been in on Rafael Devers? Should they have considered making the move that ultimately the San Francisco Giants were in on? We'll talk about that here on the Redbird Report. Should the Cardinals have been in on Rafael Devers? It's a question that I've seen a lot of fans asking. And listen, it's a fair one. He is a superstar talent that was just traded for I mean, not a crazy package if we're being real here. They gave up, the San Francisco Giants did earlier this week, a mid-rotation starting pitcher, a project outfielder, a major league setup man, I guess would be the way that I would describe Jordan Hicks at this point in his career. They tried him as a starter. It didn't work. So I guess setup man on a bloated contract with $12.5 million each of the next couple of seasons still to pay. And then they gave up like a future closer, potentially, like a way down the line guy. That's kind of the way that people have projected him. So it wasn't some massive deal to get Rafael Devers, but the Giants had to take on the full freight of the contract. And that's ultimately what it sounds like the Boston Red Sox were prioritizing here. Get the player out of our clubhouse and have somebody else take on all of this money. So T-Bone, for the Cardinals, if I was to put together like some kind of a comparable trade, I have no idea if this is something that would be interesting to the Red Sox or not. I have no idea because they have to value the players. But if you're going by the profile, something similar for the Cardinals would have been like Quinn Matthews, Steven Matz, Chase Davis, Zex Showalter. Something along those lines would have been similar for the Cardinals to what San Francisco gave up for Rafael Devers. For those that aren't familiar with Devers and what he can bring to the table offensively. Since the start of the 2022 season, Rafael Devers is a 280 hitter. He gets on base roughly at the same rate as Lars Nootbaar, 36% of the time, and he slugs over 500. His average per 162 games is 40 doubles, 35 homers, 105 ribbies. In other words, the exact kind of bat that the Cardinals have been missing. The exact kind of bat that this team has been missing. He had zero value defensively. In fact, he's a negative. And he adds zero value as what he does on the bases. He's a net negative as a base runner. In your opinion, should the Cardinals have been in on this? Should they have considered making the deal for Rafael Devers?
I think my answer is no, because I just don't know where he's playing here. Because if you want to keep Ivan Herrera, and I would, right? I mean, I would not want to include him in a trade because I believe that might potentially be an internal star that you develop yourself. But even if he's not, at minimum, he's another, 20, 25% above league average bat. That's nice to have with Rafi Devers. But I just don't know where he plays, right? Like, you're not playing him at first base over Wilson Contreras because Contreras has proven to be a good defender over there at first. Nolan Arenado's not going anywhere, so he's not playing third. And the Red Sox made it pretty clear he's not good defensively at third base when they signed Alex Bregman in the offseason. And he's not DHing over Ivan Herrera. Now, if you would take away Pages from the roster and kind of force the hand of Ali Marmol and say, hey, Herrera is the catcher, there no longer is this Pages, I think maybe then you can convince yourself the Cardinals do it. But it would be them stepping out of their comfort zone, which you just mentioned in our last segment here on the Redbird Report. They value defense. And going Herrera behind the plate is not valuing defense. It is going all bat. So I would say no to this. But as time has gone on over the, whatever it's been, 3 days that this trade has occurred, I can see how some people might convince themselves of, yeah, this trade could make sense, but it would just put the Cardinals in an uncomfortable spot that they don't like to be in, which is valuing offense over defense.
Can I ask you the dumbest question you've ever been asked before?
Sure. There are no dumb questions.
This one might be. Are we sure over the next 5 years you'd rather have Rafael Devers than Ivan Herrera?
I would say yes. I would rather have Devers over Herrera for two things. One, he's already been proven, and even in 5 years, I don't think his bat's going to really take a significant step back. So I've already know, at minimum, I'm probably getting 280, 349, 510 as his slash line. The second thing is he's left-handed, and I think that's more valuable than a right-handed bat, especially for when you get to October. Team? Well, for this team, they love lefties, so probably.
The reason I say that is because you have a ton of lefties on this specific roster, and so I actually almost feel like you need the right-handed bat. That's something that they lack right now, not only at the major league level, but even in their system. They really don't have big-time right-handed bats coming. The reason that I'm asking this is twofold. One, the salary. I mean, if you're going to pay $30 million for Rafi Devers, it limits you on what you're going to be able to do elsewhere. And two, the age, the projection of what Ivan Herrera still could be, could he be 30% worse, 20% worse than Rafi Devers for 10% of the cost? I think he might be. And they're going to play the same position. So if you ended up trading for Rafael Devers, the overwhelming likelihood is you're probably going to have to trade Ivan Herrera. because I don't know how you make both of them work on the roster long term, right? So, or Wilson Contreras. At least one of those two would have to go. And maybe you say, well, trade Wilson Contreras then. Like, this is an upgrade over Contreras. You just have him there. Rafael Devers is a great bat. I do have some questions about the way that everything went down. I do have some questions about that kind of a contract for a player that went so far south in Boston that quickly. They have a good manager there, man. Alex Cora is a good manager. I don't know that the situation was handled extremely well, but I think he's a really good manager. And for this to go as poorly as it did, and for the guys in the locker room to seemingly not care that he's gone, like maybe it's all just, they're saying the right things. I don't know if that always happens, though, in these situations. I don't know if you've heard some of the comments coming out of Boston, but they don't seem to be overly broken up about the fact that Rafael Devers is going to be playing elsewhere the rest of the season and beyond. So I think my answer is no. I would not have done this deal if I was the Cardinals, but I would be in on the next deal like this if it's not a DH first base type. The Cardinals need their Rafael Devers. It just couldn't be Rafael Devers right now at this specific time. T-Bone, you brought this to my attention, and it's so true. The Cardinals are lacking this guy, and I would love for him to be Jordan Walker. That was the hope, right? You developed the superstar. He's 23 years old. You came from within. He's cost-controlled, and boom, now you add externally as well. It doesn't seem like that's happening, at least not in the near future. The rest of the division has done this. Ellie De La Cruz with the Reds, young superstar. Pete Crow Armstrong with the Cubs, young, homegrown superstar. I guess not technically homegrown. They traded for him, but young and from their system now. The Brewers, Jackson Chourio. The Pirates is a little different, but they've got Paul Skeens. We can all agree that's a superstar, right? Just on the pitching side of things instead of the position player side. The Cardinals need to develop one, but more importantly, they just need to add one. I don't care where it comes from. So the next time that a player like this is available, Kyle Tucker of 2025, this upcoming offseason, go get him. That's what this Cardinals team is severely lacking. You mentioned earlier, how do you view this core? What does this all mean? It means they have to trade from this group, the surplus of position players right now, and go find something that helps you today, preferably in the outfield. But if that's a guy that ends up, if you can find a way to move on from Arenado and he plays third, cool. But you have to find somebody that fits into your current situation and can be this bat that Rafi Devers, they hope he will be in San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, they are clearly lacking the superstar bat that they need for this to occur. What is frustrating is, you just read off some of those names, right? Like Ellie De La Cruz, Paul Skeens, Jackson Chourio, Pete Crow Armstrong. Now, sure, yeah, he was acquired in a trade, but two things on that. One, the last Cardinals guy that they developed was 20 plus years ago when it was Albert?
Superstar, yeah.
You can't, it's just so hard. And I understand, look, it's hard to develop superstars. But, man, I'm watching other teams in your division be able to do this. And then, the Reds have had two in this time frame. They developed Joey Votto, and then they got the whole career of Joey Votto, and then what happens? Boom, they develop Ellie De La Cruz.
I guess this is a question. In that span, who else in the National League hasn't developed a superstar?
Oh.
And that doesn't necessarily mean, just drafted and developed. It could be a guy that came into their system via trade, right? Like Pete Crow Armstrong would fit into that criteria. Adam Wainwright back in the day would have fit into that criteria for the Cardinals. But the Phillies have done this internally. The Braves have 6 of them. The Nationals right now with James Wood.
And prior to that, Soto.
That guy's pretty good.
Bryce Harper.
The Marlins did it with Giancarlo Stanton and that whole outfield, Christian Yelich. Is there anybody else in the National League that has completely failed to develop a superstar position player other than the Cardinals? Pirates?
I think McCutchen, 20 years ago, they would have had McCutchen. He won an MVP there.
Yeah, I guess he would.
So they fall into that category. Now, they haven't done it in a while. They're kind of on the same as the Cardinals. Who's the Philly one? Who's the Philly internal star that they developed?
Reese Hoskins was developed internally, yeah?
Yeah, but I don't know if I'd call him a star.
Okay.
He was a really good player, but I don't know if I'd say star.
Between now and then, I've got to be blanking on somebody that...
Because, the Mets, I think, David Wright. David Wright was the guy they developed. He was a star.
Sure.
Because outside of that, everybody else that they've acquired right now has been somebody that they went out and signed because they've got the financial might. But that's the other problem with this, too, is though we're having this conversation of like, oh, who's the Phillies guy they developed internally? They've got a payroll that they can operate and get by not doing that.
Sure.
They can go out and sign Bryce Harper. They can go out and sign Kyle Schwarber. I don't think, unless ownership decides to change their mind and open up the wallet, they don't have the leeway to just say, oh, yeah, well, we'll go sign a superstar if we don't develop it.
Ryan Howard.
That's it. Yeah, Howard. I guess Utley and Rollins would have fallen into that too. Yep. Okay, so yeah, then they've done this as well. The only team that I would say, oh no, not even Colorado, because they developed Arenado. Yeah, so the Cardinals.
And Tulo.
Oh yeah, and I forgot about Tulowitzki. Yeah, he was very good too. The Cardinals are probably that team that is like last place right now when it comes to the last 20 years of developing a superstar. Now, where I'll give them some credit.
I'm gonna push back real quick. Brewers. I know we're putting Chourio into that category.
Ryan Braun. I could be wrong. I think he was developed internally.
Yeah.
Because now he cheated. Now, if you want to take that away from him, sure.
I was going to push back. I had this whole thing spelled out because I was like, if we're going to include Chourio into the superstar conversation, we probably need to put Matt Carpenter into that conversation. We almost certainly underrate his production here locally, because if we were doing this for another team and we looked up Matt Carpenter, we'd be like, damn, finished like top 10 in the MVP voting a couple of times, hit, 36 home runs in one season, broke the single season doubles record in another. Like, Matt Carpenter was a really, really, really good baseball player that I just don't think quite reaches that same level of superstar status. But for most of these other teams, you had somebody that didn't just have the question. Like, it was Joey Votto, superstar, no doubt about it. Giancarlo Stanton, superstar, no doubt about it. These guys were, you didn't even have to have a second of thought as to whether or not they were in that category. The Cardinals have been severely lacking in that department.
And I will give them credit for this. I know we've had this conversation a bunch of times, whether it be on the show or off air, where I would say they're probably first place is when it comes to developing the complementary pieces, right? They're very good at doing that. And in fact, that's also what's led them to getting their version of stars externally, right?
Yes.
They were able to acquire Paul Goldschmidt. How? By having a nice piece in Carson Kelly and Luke Weaver that they were able to develop that are solid big leaguers, but were able to turn that into their next star. You look at Nolan Arenado, that one they didn't give up much, but Austin Gomber has been a solid number 4 or 5 and would be that for any team in baseball. You gave that up for him. So they do a good job of developing those nice complementary pieces. They just don't get the superstar. And I get what you're saying on Matt Carpenter. He's a very good player. And I'm not taking anything away from him. I don't know if I would call him a star, which sounds weird because I know he finished top 10 MVP once or twice in his career. But when I think star, I almost feel like I'm picturing, and maybe this is just wrong and it is super hard to come up with this, but I think almost a face of baseball, right? Joey Votto was that in Cincinnati. Votto was on the cover of a video game, if I'm not mistaken. Ryan Braun was that. Those are the kind of guys. Andrew McCutchen was that. He put Pittsburgh baseball on the map because he was that guy. I just don't know if Matt Carpenter falls into that. And that's where I would say, the last guy that did that was Albert. And that was 20 years ago now at this point.
I agree with you. But, Rafael Devers had an OPS over the last 5 seasons of 870. Matt Carpenter in his 6-year prime here in St. Louis was at an 850. It's about 34% above league average offensively for Devers. Matt Carpenter, 31% above league average offensively. So if we're going to qualify Rafi Devers as being a true star, I think we probably have to do the same thing for Matt Carpenter. And if I know you're not a fan of this statistic, T-Bone, so I'm taking a chance by
bring up WAR.
If you're looking at WAR from 2019 to 2025 versus Matt Carpenter 2013 to 2018, Carpenter actually comes out ahead. And on a per 162 basis, Carpenter is ahead on that regard as well. So I think Carpenter would be the guy that you'd throw into this category of how does he stack up against all of these other stars from these other teams that they've developed over the last, let's call it just 15 years, right? Since 2010. Basically the post-Albert era for the most part outside of that last couple of years. The Cardinals just don't stack up well in that regard. Most of these other teams have developed somebody that you could put head to head with Matt Carpenter. You'd say that guy was better, or that guy had a longer stretch of being dominant at the major league level. Or maybe it was just like a Ryan Howard. That guy's peak was better than anything that Matt Carpenter was ever able to get to. So whether it is developing that guy, trading for that guy, signing Kyle Tucker this offseason, I do not care how you acquire the star. But when you look at this lineup as currently constructed, it is very clear what they are missing. They're missing a star. They need a guy that can hit like third in their lineup, and everything else from there starts to really fall into place. That doesn't mean everything's magically fixed. You got some rotation questions. I don't know if anybody has noticed that right now. But on the position player side of things, if you go get that star, everything starts to make a lot more sense. And you have a surplus of position player talent to do it from if you want to go get that guy via trade.
And this is why, again, I'm on your side if I wouldn't made the Devers move. But where I have, like, as the days have gone on and the more I'm starting to think about this, I do think there's a chance by the time we record the next Redbird Report, I might be on the side of they should have acquired Devers. But, like, you just said what I think is the important question. Like, okay, so it wasn't Devers. Ideally, it doesn't fit. So ideally, we'd love an outfielder. Well, okay, well, who's the next star that becomes available? Sure, we can say Kyle Tucker. You, me, and everybody's grandma knows the Cardinals aren't signing Kyle Tucker. So then who is the next guy? I don't know. And that's why when, like, all of a sudden a superstar becomes available, I could see how people would argue, yeah, you go make that move. And sure, now you have this position surplus. You know what you do? You trade from it and you go out and acquire what you just said. What do you need help after that? Oh, our starting pitching has a bunch of big question marks. Okay, well, can I pair a Jordan Walker, or maybe trade a Von Herrera or trade a Nolan Gorman? Can I take some of this surplus and go out and acquire a legitimate dude now? That's when I look at this and say, boy, maybe they could have or should have been in this conversation. Because sure, ideally when I just say, yeah, you acquire Rafael Devers, I go, where's he playing? I have no idea. The answer is, okay, well, I'll trade away some pieces and I'll go try and improve the ball club externally by doing that. But now I found the single hardest thing that's under control on his contract for the next, whatever it is, 7 years. It's Rafi bleeping Devers. That guy's a stud. And I've seen that guy perform on the biggest stage. Like, maybe the reason I don't compare him with Matt Carpenter, because I saw Rafi Devers win a World Series. And correct. Carpenter got to one, and it wasn't his fault, but he's not a World Series champion there from 2013.
The craziest part, Devers, while making a lot of money, it's $27 a year, basically, from now until the end of the contract. And you're looking at a guy like Kyle Tucker, he might get $50 a year. I mean, that is half of what you're expecting Kyle Tucker to potentially get in this upcoming offseason. And I think Kyle Tucker is the same age, if I'm not mistaken. So if you just put those two up one for one against one another, I'd rather have Kyle Tucker for this team. But given the contract, it's kind of the Ivan Herrera situation, right? Like, Ivan Herrera is $1 million, Rafael Devers is $27 million, and Kyle Tucker is $50 million. So which one of these would you want over the next 5 years? And it's really the next like 7 to 10. I think I would go, given the current roster construction, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but per dollar, bang for your buck wise, I would bet on Ivan Herrera if I have to use that roster spot for them. Tucker's difference is he can play outfield, and he's got value defensively out there. But if I had to put any of them in my DH spot right now, I would go with Herrera, given the money. That's why it comes down to what you just said, which is you got to find the next guy that hopefully plays the outfield. Or you have to be open to the idea of Donovan moving positions to the outfield, or Arenado is just like going to have to go elsewhere, and you eat the money and you have a third baseman that comes in that can be a potential superstar. Finding that guy, easier said than done. All right, coming up next, this is quietly a huge week for the St. Louis Cardinals when it comes to their chase for both the wild card and also the NL Central. We'll give you the latest on that coming up next year on the Redbird Report. Quietly a huge week for the Cardinals, both in the NL Central and also in the wild card race. T-Bone, we don't yet have the results from the White Sox series because we're recording this at the time where they're like at the back end of the first game of the doubleheader against Chicago. However, this weekend, 3 games set at home against Cincinnati, and they continue that homestand next week. By the time we record, we'll have seen 3 of the 4-game series against the Chicago Cubs as well. Cubs are like 7 games up on you in the division right now. You've got to start making up some ground there if you want any chance of winning this division. And I find it maybe even more important that the Cincinnati Reds are tied with you right now in the NL Central and in the wild card race. And every time we talk about the wild card, it's like, well, you're not only a game and a half back of the Padres, you also have a couple of teams between you and that spot right now, and the Reds are among those teams. What are you looking for over the next week or so as the Cardinals go up against two Central Division foes?
Well, I think this is going to be the stretch where, we talk about the offense a lot. I think the offense is going to, if you're going to be a playoff team, I think it's on the back of the offense, and I think the offense is going to have to carry you through this stretch. And that's tough to say because they've been in a rut in the last couple of weeks. My hope is that this White Sox series is kind of the bounce back series. Now, I say that, we don't know the result of this, and I'll probably watch them get shut out tonight when I watch Game 2. But the offense to me is the one that's got to carry you through this. Like I look at these pitching matchups in these series that are coming ahead. One, you don't see Hunter Green because he's on the IL, so you avoid the Cincinnati Reds ace in this series. And also like looking at what's ahead for the Chicago Cubs. I know like Tyon's had a good year, Boyd's had a good year, Horton and Brown. None of those guys are guys that really strike a whole lot of fear into me personally. So to me, it's does the offense keep the team afloat, right? I think if you have any hope of winning this division, you've got to take 3-4 from the Cubs. It is just that simple. I think if you earn a split, maybe there's a chance because you got them on the road coming up at the beginning of July, on July 4th weekend. But you lose 3 or 4 to the Cubs, I'm just telling you right now, I will come on air on Friday and say that, you know what, they're not winning the division. Their playoff hopes just rely on the wild card. And I think that's why you also got to take advantage of the Reds. Make sure that you try and stay ahead of them. Because when we talk about what are they going to do at the trade deadline, I've said this a couple of times. If you're a game and a half back, but you're fourth of the 3 wild card spots, I can see how you maybe convince yourself, let's add on the margins, right? But if you're a game and a half back and there's also like 2 or 3 teams right there with you and you're like suddenly like 6th because you don't hold the tiebreakers, now you got to leapfrog 3 teams to get into that wild card picture. Yeah, to me, that would make you seller. So that's why the Red Series is so big.
I hate when people say this, but I'm going to go ahead and fall into the old cliche. You have to get off to a good start. And what I mean by that is, dude, look at these series recently where they've struggled. You lost that first game against Baltimore, put yourself behind the 8 ball, found a way to win the second and third game. Texas, you lose that first game 11-1. You're behind the 8 ball. You lose 2 out of 3 there. Lose game 1 against Kansas City. Lose 2 out of 3 in that series. Lose game 1 in dramatic fashion against the Toronto Blue Jays. Get swept in that series. Lose game 1 again against the Milwaukee Brewers. You end up losing 3 out of the 4 in that series. You've been playing from behind too much. And I'm talking about in games where you give up the lead early and you're chasing the rest of the game, and talking about in these series, something they had done really well for most of the season, especially during that hot stretch. They were winning game 1, and then you like put yourself from ahead, and Ollie's able to manage from a place of advantage. So like game 2, he really goes for it, get yourself the series, and then game 3. If you're not having to go to your high leverage guys, like, all right, we'll kind of lean off of them here, so we're set up well for the next series. It sets you up to continue to maintain some of that success. They have not been able to do that lately, and it goes beyond just that. In game 3 of the series against Cincinnati, you've got Abbott on the mound. Left-handed pitcher. Cardinals have not been as good against lefties. He's got a 2 ERA on the season. Yeah, that's going to be a tough task. Game 4 of the series against the Cubs, you've got Boyd on the mound. Left-handed pitcher, 2.8 ERA on the series. Again, or on the season. Tough task. You've got to get the games early. Bank those early so that game 3 against Cincinnati, game 4 against Chicago, that's gravy. If you find a way to win that game against the best pitcher that you see coming from the left side, you already felt great about yourself, so whatever. Again, it's all found money there. You've got to get off to good starts in these 2 respective series. I know it's the most simple of analysis, but it's really true, and it's something that the Cardinals have been struggling with mightily lately.
Yeah, though I think they've got an offense that can get them back in these games, when you're going through a rut, you can't, right? Like, they haven't felt like the same team here of late. And again, hopefully this is the series. The White Sox one is the one that kind of propels things. And it's like, oh, whew, boy, remember 2 weeks ago when they couldn't hit at all? But right now, if the offense continues to scuffle, your pitching just can't make it, it's a 3-0 game all of a sudden. Because now you really are chasing the game. And I think they've found some back end. We haven't talked about them in the podcast. I think O'Brien and Granillo. Boy, I'm going to get
Granillo.
Granillo.
Like
I'm going to
head,
get there at
shoulders,
some
knee,
point.
and toes.
I think they've kind of established, hey, maybe they might be the guys that help solidify the back part of the bullpen for when you get in a scenario where you fall behind. But you can't always constantly rely on the offense. to pick you up if you fall behind early.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. 7-game homestand between the Cardinals and the Reds, and then the Cardinals and the Cubs. This is the first time that we have seen the Cubs so far this season. It is mid-June. Weird quirk of the schedule. It is what it is. Be fun to see them here, and then eventually 4th of July weekend out at Wrigley.
What do you think they do in it?
I think that they will win 2 out of 3 against Cincinnati and lose 3 out of 4 against Chicago.
That's where I am. I think they can take 2 or 3 from Cincinnati, Chicago. I don't think we talk enough about them as being a juggernaut. And I think they will take 3 or 4 from the Cardinals.
They have been as good this year as the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Like, take away everything, strip away the names, strip away all of the preconceived notions about what those teams were going to be coming into the season. On the year, by winning percentage, the Cubs are better than the LA Dodgers. They are better than the New York Mets. So that's what you're going up against. I hope they win 3 out of 4. Hope they sweep them. It'd be great. But I just think that it will be the other side that comes out victorious, unfortunately. For Tanner Hendrickson and Zane, who has done a fantastic job on the video side of things, as always, I'm Brandon Kiley. Like I mentioned, Cardinals Assistant General Manager Rob Cerfolio expected to join the show with us next week. So if you want to see that, be sure to stay tuned for that. We'll talk to you guys then. This has been the Redbird Report on 101 ESPN.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.